Melania Trump is First Lady for a second time. Will her tenure be any different this time around in one of the most visible roles in US politics? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, from a humble start in communist Yugoslavia, Melania Naus, as she was then known, was an international model before meeting Donald J. Trump in 1998. They married 7 years later and she was thrust into the tabloid limelight. But she has largely stayed out of US politics since 2016, when her husband first became president, unlike the precedents set by Michelle Obama, Laura Bush and Hillary Clinton. So, who is Melania Trump?
Stepping back into the spotlight as US First Lady, Melania Trump is only the second presidential spouse born outside the United States. She grew up here, the small town of Sevnica in Slovenia. But her modelling ambition took her to New York, where she eventually met and married the twice-divorced entrepreneur Donald Trump, entering Manhattan high society. After his first inauguration in 2017, Melania initially kept her distance from Washington, staying in New York to focus on their then 10-year-old son Barron and his education. But she did later accompany her husband on official visits and spoke out, asserting herself on a solo trip to Africa.
I give him my honest opinion and honest advice, and sometimes he listens and sometimes he doesn't, but I have my own voice.
But her choice in clothing has turned heads. In 2018, she wore a jacket reading "I really don't care, do you?" to a children's migrant detention centre, coming in for heavy criticism. How much she influences her husband's policies is unknown. In her memoir released last year, she spoke out in direct opposition to her husband on the contentious issue of abortion.
My husband knew my position, my belief, since the day we met. So it was not a big surprise for him.
Will Melania remain quietly in the shadows of Donald Trump in his second term? Or will she evoke the image of her new official portrait and be a fully present First Lady?
Well, let's meet our guests. In Washington, D.C., we have Andrew Oak. He's author of Unusual for Their Time, on the road with America's First Ladies. Joining us from Boston, Massachusetts, we have Tammy Vigil. She's Associate Professor at Boston University. She's also the author of Melania and Michelle, First Ladies in a New Era. And I'm delighted to say, here in the studio with me is Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Tammy, to you first. So, there is a new book out, there is a TV documentary series coming. I guess second time round, we're going to see a new First Lady.
Oh, I think so. The first time around, Melania Trump had about as little experience as a political wife as any First Lady that we've seen in modern history. And now she has the experience of having been in the White House, of having experienced how to deal with the press for all the pros and cons that come with it. And so I think what we're going to see this time around is a lot more intentional action by Melania Trump. She's going to be more decisive, and she'll know how to make better decisions about who she wants to be and how she wants to behave in this role.
Andrew, is it fair to say Melania was a reluctant First Lady first time round?
Sure. I mean, exactly what was just said. You know, a lot of First Ladies have the experience of being a political wife long before they're in the White House. They're wives of congressmen. They're wives of, even better, governors at the highest level of the United States for these states, to have this experience of being the First Lady of a state before they get into the White House, or even going back further, the wife of a general. So they've entertained, they've had these political events, they know how to carry themselves. I think Melania was most effective in her first term on the global stage. She spoke many different languages. She had experience traveling around the world. So that's where she came in handy at events overseas, at places like the UN, hosting state dinners and things like that. But being here at home and a domestic First Lady, she's got 4 years under her belt, and I think she will come out with more confidence.
Greg, to you, how important then is that first 4 years where the environment was pretty hostile to her at times.
It was terribly hostile. And obviously, Trump derangement syndrome was very hostile to the president, but also to the First Lady. And also remember, she was still looking after her son, her Barron, who was her only child. And I think that was really important for her to stay in New York, which she did for the beginning of the term anyway. So she really wasn't comfortable in Washington in many ways. This time, Barron's off at university. He's much older, obviously, and I think she'll be much more involved in the Washington circuit.
And in your opinion, how key to Donald Trump's success this time round is Melania?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's 100%. I mean, but it definitely helps. You know, she's completely elegant and attractive, obviously, but more importantly, she helped him in the campaign. She did really well helping his numbers in California, where he picked up 14 counties, and in North Carolina as well. So, you know, when they were doing that kind of post-hurricane tour. So that was a really important moment for Melania, and she did a great job.
Tammy, to you, she strikes me as a little bit of an enigma. Maybe in Europe we don't know that much about her opinions. Everyone's got an opinion on her, but we don't know too much about what she thinks politically.
Yeah, she's been a bit more quiet than many of the more contemporary first ladies in terms of expressing her own political perspective. In some cases, I think lately we've seen her being more willing to speak up and speak out. One example was during the campaign when she was sharing her own point of view on abortion and how it differed from her husband. So I think that we'll see a little bit more of that this time around. I think she'll be a little bit more comfortable to share her perspective, to push her own agenda, as opposed to having other agendas sort of placed on her like she did during her first 4 years in the White House. But yeah, she has not been as open politically, just been more of the classic supportive wife position that she's taken so far. But I expect that to change. I think she'll be a little bit more vocal this time.
Andrew, just spell out for us the role of First Lady. I mean, there's huge pressure, enormous scrutiny. People love you, people loathe you, people don't really know you. And Melania gets all that multiplied because of who she's married to.
Absolutely. You know, the role of First Lady is not paid. It is not elected. There's no job description. There's no legal obligation to fulfill the role. It's been a long time. It's been the 19-teens since we had a non-wife First Lady, when Margaret Wilson had to stand in for her mother, Ellen Wilson, after she passed, before her father married Edith Wilson. But these women step into this and create their own role. And the women that stay apolitical or outside of the politics and the policy tend to favor better. You know, they're not elected. We didn't elect them, but they are always advising from behind the scenes. This has gone on since before the Revolutionary War. We've got letters that prove that Martha Washington was a consultant and advisor to George Washington. But the public scrutiny has gotten worse lately, and I think it's because of social media. The last First Lady we had, where people had strong opinions about her husband, but they loved her no matter what, was Laura Bush. And along come Michelle Obama, married to Barack Obama. The political lines have gotten stronger, more divisive. We're more bipartisan at this point in America, and it shows and rolls downhill to the First Lady. If someone likes their husband, they're going to love her. If someone doesn't like her husband, they're going to really put her through the ringer. And we're seeing a lot of that with both Michelle Obama and now Melania Trump.
Greg, it's not a paid position, but this is a job where you need a tough skin.
Yeah.
Like it or not, people are going to have an opinion. Melania has a tough skin.
That's right. I think she does. You could see it in her face in many ways at the inauguration. And, you know, again, she's completely elegant. So I think it's going to be difficult for people to criticize her in the ways that they've criticized First Ladies in the past. I'm glad Andrew brought up Edith Wilson, because she ended up essentially running the White House. And so you have active, you know, when Woodrow Wilson had a stroke and he basically was incapacitated, you know, she really was the president in many ways. And so, and, you know, you saw a little bit of that with Jill Biden as well. You know, when the argument is that she was really in charge when Joe was having his cognitive challenges. And so this is, you know, there's going to be different roles for different First Ladies. I don't think Melania Trump will have a role similar to to Hillary Clinton for sure. I don't think it'll be like that at all. I think it'll be much more in the traditional Nancy Reagan, Laura Bush.
Tammy, to you, does the average American's opinion of Melania depend on where they stand on her husband?
I think they are influenced by where they stand on her husband. You know, how they feel about Donald Trump definitely is going to make a difference. The people who love Donald Trump absolutely love Melania Trump. People who don't like Donald Trump start with a very bad perspective towards Melania Trump, and I don't think that's fair to her. However, as I think somebody else pointed out, you know, Laura Bush overcame the extreme unpopularity of George W. Bush, and she was one of the most popular first ladies that we've had since we've started polling about popularity and favorability ratings for first ladies. And so it is possible for a first lady, through her own actions, her own personality, and her own communicative skills, to be able to overcome any dislike of her husband. We just haven't seen Melania Trump make the effort to actually kind of try to win over the public in a bipartisan kind of way, the way that Laura Bush did, for example.
Andrew, does it matter that she's not American?
No, I think in today's day and age, it really doesn't. You know, she's only the second non-American born, foreign-born first lady. Louisa Catherine Adams being the first, married to John Quincy Adams. And at that point, her mother-in-law, Abigail Adams, said to John Quincy Adams, "This is going to be an albatross. We're Americans. You can't go marrying non-American women." I think you know, in the new globalized world, it doesn't matter as much. I think that more matters to Melania. Maybe, you know, she's not a public speaker. She was in front of the camera as a supermodel and in magazines and all kind of things like that, but not really interviewed. So, you know, she might be a little self-conscious, but again, she's gaining that confidence now in this second term, and she's had 4 years to think about it. You know, not a lot of these first ladies that typically they roll, either they have 4 years and they're out, or they have 4 years, which roll into a second term, another 4 years. But she's also the second only non-consecutive term first lady in history, Frances Cleveland being the other. So she's had a lot of time to think about this, and she's definitely more prepared this go around.
And certainly, Greg, the TV documentary series that is coming very soon, I think for a global audience, that will give us an insight that we've never had before, because everyone's watched this woman, people watch what she wears, right. You know, he missed a kiss here or there, or, you know, they're analysing every bit of body language, but this time round, we'll get to see a TV show all about her.
Yeah, and I hope, I'm sure it'll be quite favorable, obviously, but it's good news because there is so much speculation about her. She didn't really come, you know, as I said earlier, she didn't come to Washington as much as typically a First Lady would. And so, yeah, it'll be great to see her up close and have people get to know her. I think it'll do very well internationally because she's not American. She speaks 5 languages. She's super smart. So I think it will go really well.
Tammy, just to you on the TV series, I mean, is there a money-making element to being First Lady? Is it lucrative long-term, or is it something that she just needs to kind of embrace?
Well, I think there's the possibility to make it lucrative. I don't think most of the first ladies have tried to make it that lucrative, but we can see in terms of what happened with Michelle Obama, for example, her books sold tremendously well. She had a book tour. There's been a lot of ways in which Michelle Obama was able to parlay her first ladyship into other opportunities for herself. And I think Melania Trump has the opportunity to do that. I think one of the things she does need to do, though, is make a little bit stronger effort to win over an audience and to broaden the audience a little bit more than her husband traditionally does, and that she did the first time around. If she can make her audience a little bit more broad and spread her appeal to others beyond the base that really supports her husband, then I think she has the opportunity to really become potentially a beloved first lady, which then gives her the opportunity to do things like, you know, make more money off of book sales and to parlay her first ladyship into other opportunities that can then let her be her own person in the public sphere, both during her time in the White House and afterwards.
Andrew, is there a feeling that the environment is a bit more welcoming now, would you say?
Well, you know, that's yet to be seen. Again, it's, you know, people win in elections and people lose in elections. And first ladies, again, historically speaking, they're kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't. You know, if they don't spruce up the White House, they're criticized for that, and if they spruce it up, they're criticized for spending too much money. I think the interesting thing, to the point of the documentary and the books, and I mean, Hillary Clinton makes a very good living with speeches, and she's written almost more books than any other first lady. I think maybe Eleanor Roosevelt has written more books, or has written more books than Hillary Clinton. But Dr. Jill Biden opened the door to this making money as a first lady, staying employed while in the White House. Now, I don't know how many classes Dr. Biden actually taught. Probably not that many, because she was everywhere, and she was a remarkable first lady and one of the most visible and productive aspects of the Biden administration, in my opinion. And she had a great social media team making sure everyone knew about it. So, we can't control what these women do as a career before the White House or even after the White House. And now that Biden has opened that door, well, Melania Trump is a businesswoman. She was a businesswoman before the White House. She was a businesswoman in a sense when she was running her own modeling career. And she's a businesswoman now. She's got her Bitcoins and her, the Amazon documentary deal. She's continuing to be a businesswoman. We can't really control that. And I think it's an interesting aspect of how these first ladies move forward.
Greg, just on the issue Andrew mentions of the Bitcoin, the crypto, the Melania meme coin that was launched. I mean, if Jill Biden or Michelle Obama had done this, they would have been absolutely crucified.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges with politics is, you could have someone from a different party do the same thing and you'll get criticism. But I would just remind that, she is commercial, so is President Trump. They're private sector people. They were never politicians. And surely President Trump has brought, commercial private sector mentality to Washington. The Bidens made a ton of money, especially while Joe was vice president. And they did it by selling influence around the world. And that is not going to go down well historically in terms of, the views of Biden by history. And so, so there's ways to make money legitimately, and there's ways to make money quite illegitimately. And I think that's going to be one of the sad legacies of Joe Biden.
So what you're saying is they're all at it?
They're all at it. It's just a matter of if you do it in a transparent and honest way. And I think the Trumps are all very commercial. They all get along really well. The children, they've looked after Barron. Melania gets along very well with J.D. Vance's wife. I mean, it's a nice-looking crowd, in terms of their feelings to each other. But in terms of making money, they're very transparent about it, right? This is what we do, and I think that as long as there's no conflict, I'm all for it. But I think what the influence peddling is something that was completely dishonest. They covered it up as best they could. It was very hard with the censorship, everything. So it's a very delicate topic. But I would hope that anybody who's doing it is just very transparent about it.
Tammy, tell me what we're talking about, influence peddling and the role of the First Lady. I mean, you've spoken to many First Ladies over the years, I'm guessing, with all your writing and research. What qualities do you think Americans admire in a First Lady?
Oh, that's an interesting question. One of the things that I found in a bunch of the research that I've done is that Americans tend to, whether they're conservative leaning or more liberal leaning, they tend to want their first ladies to be a lot more conventional. So they want them to care about traditionally feminine perspectives and issues. They get upset when first ladies move beyond conventional boundaries. It's really kind of interesting. And this is one of the reasons why Melania Trump sometimes gets a bit of criticism, is that she doesn't actually fit into the conservative mold in the way that you would expect for the spouse of a conservative president. And so in terms of doing things like, not moving into the White House or not wanting to do the Christmas decorations, things like that, she tends to push people in directions that they're uncomfortable with. I actually think that's a good thing, because the role of the First Ladyship, as we've talked about, is not well defined, and it should be flexible both with the women that are in it, but also with the times that change. There's no problem with having some influence. I think the question is, what are we most comfortable with them influencing us on? Most Americans want their first ladies to only stay in the feminine realm, And I think that Melania Trump has the opportunity to move beyond that. And I think that's a really great opportunity, and it can certainly open up conversations that should be held about the role of women in society, in American society, as well as the First Ladyship.
Andrew, there have been some missteps along the way. I mean, wearing that jacket to the Children's Migrant Centre a few years back, remember that famously, where she wore a jacket that said, "I don't really care." Has she learned from those kind of missteps?
I would hope so. You know, I think she has, and I think we see it in her official White House photograph that's come out, the black and white in the power suit, leaning on the desk, the Washington Monument behind her out the window. You know, she's said herself, she has a different attitude about this next 4 years. I think that, you know, she was Melania Trump in the first 4 years, and before that, Melania Trump. I'm sure not many people told her what to do or advised her, and she had a life of doing pretty much anything she wants. So for whatever reason she wore the jacket, which I will never be able to explain, even if I was sitting in the room and Mrs. Trump told me herself, I don't know if she'd be telling me the entire truth of why she wore that jacket. Clearly a mistake, and clearly something people remember, and she did it as First Lady. I think that's what the important line is when we're talking about and even criticizing or judging things that she does as First Lady. We can talk about things that she did prior to First Lady. She had no idea that she would be First Lady. I don't think Donald Trump 15 years ago ever imagined that he'd really be president of the United States. And then he was, and now he is again. You know, you do learn from experience. And Melania Trump has verbally stated, I have learned from my first 4 years. So I think that we will see less of those type of obvious gaffes and hopefully a productive 4 years for her moving forward.
Greg, in the coming months, President Trump will visit Europe. How much of a boost and a bonus will Melania be by his side?
I think it'll be great, and even more so than the last time, the first term. I think she's more popular. He's actually more popular in Europe now. The whole continent is moving to the right, even here in the UK. In spite of having, you know, a Labour government, you see in the polls that people are taking the Trump administration seriously, and they like what they see. And so I think the welcome will be much better than it was in the first term.
Andrew, just talking about entourages, there are a lot of people around Melania's husband. How do you think she gets on with some of these big alpha male characters like Elon Musk being around all the time?
I think Melania Trump is a very capable businesswoman, and she's been dealing with her husband for as long as she has, who is a strong alpha male. I don't think she'll have any trouble at all. She's said in interviews, I give my husband my opinion. Sometimes he agrees, sometimes he disagrees. I think she'll be standing up a lot more for herself in this 4 years, as she's said that she would, as she's more prepared, as we've been talking about. I think a First Lady's influence goes beyond the White House and beyond cabinet members and beyond administration. It goes to the American public. A lot of people made fun of her hat. A lot of people celebrated her hat that she wore on the inauguration. I thought she looked absolutely fantastic, high fashion, classy, elegant, and we've already seen people in pop culture wearing it who I don't know are Donald Trump fans or even Melania fans. Pink just wore a unmistakably exact replica of the hat almost at the Fire Aid concerts for the LA fires. So we're already seeing her fashion. In the first 4 years, a lot of women were wearing their jackets on their shoulders as she did. And these are people that openly did not support Donald Trump or thus Melania Trump, but these First Ladies' influences have been that way with hairstyles, hemlines, necklines, jewelry, things that you eat, places you go. These First Ladies influence a lot more pop culture than people even understand or give them credit for.
Greg, I'm reminded of that line, famous line from Oscar Wilde, the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And I think, you know, she is talked about probably more than any other woman in America right now, or any woman in the world. And it's interesting how First Ladies and First Husbands are not particularly talked about in the West, except for America. So maybe this started with Jackie O, who kind of, you know, wrote the book on being a First Lady and bringing fashion back to the White House. I'm sure Andrew knows more history than I do on that. But I think that, you know, the role is so significant in America and everybody's watching. So far, so good. She is, again, elegant, but also a powerful businesswoman. And so I think she can handle herself just fine. You've seen a lot more photos of her in the main dining room at Mar-a-Lago when there's big guests on board. I think she was there with Justin Trudeau. You see her all the time when Elon Musk is running around. So she's definitely more involved right now with the entourage, whether it's men or women. And as Andrew pointed out, a lot of powerful women in the White House right now.
Absolutely. Tammy, talking of powerful women, final point to you. All this discussion about a first lady, when will we see an American first gentleman?
Well, I have to admit, my hope for that is high. My confidence in it is low. I don't know that we have moved ourselves as a nation forward enough to be able to see ourselves as voting for a woman. I know with Hillary Clinton and then Kamala Harris or even Nikki Haley when she was running, there was a lot of hopeful talk. I'm honestly not quite that confident as I used to be. I think we still have a long way to go in terms of understanding the capabilities of women. And I think the ways in which we treat our first ladies sometimes reflects our interest in women, but also our interest in keeping them limited. And so that's my sad takeaway from a lot of what I've been seeing the last, I would say, couple of decades. So.
Tammy, thank you, and to Andrew and Greg as well. Fantastic contribution. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.